I have been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel lately, and I know I'm a little late to the party on that. The game did come out like 2 years ago, but I wanted to share my perspective because I don't think most of my typical audience actually plays Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and I've always been a bit of a Konami critic and Konami skeptic. So I wanted to share my thoughts on the game. Now, I'm going to rate the game in on three major categories. So the first is the economy, which I think is very important because like if the in-game economy sucks and the monetization sucks, then like people just aren't going to play the game no matter what, right? It doesn't matter like what else you tell them. If the monetization sucks, people aren't playing it. Then the second thing I want to talk about is UI, right? The game's user interface. Like how does it feel to actually be clicking on buttons in game? Is it intuitive? Could it be better, etc.? And then lastly, I'm going to talk about the gameplay itself, right? Like the format, the game balance. How does it feel? What's my perspective on that? As someone who, of course, mainly plays retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Formats, I have not played competitive advanced format Yu-Gi-Oh! Since 2016. So that is the perspective that I'm coming from. Now, the economy of the game, I actually think is one of the stronger points. And I was coming into this game thinking, it's Konami. You know, Konami, they're super money hungry. They don't care about the players. This is probably monetized to all hell. And then when I actually started playing, I was pleasantly surprised because of all of the digital TCGs that I've played or CCGs, and there's been a few, right? There's been, well, this, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, Marvel Snap, which I still play, Hex TCG, which is a dead game. It wasn't very successful. And then I feel like there's a fourth that I'm forgetting. But anyways, I've played a few. Oh, also Magic Online back in the day. Now it's like Magic Arena, but I haven't played Arena, but I played Magic Online. But of all of the online games that I've played, all of the online card games that I've played, this has the best monetization scheme by far. So originally when I started playing and I was thinking about doing this video, I was thinking, okay, probably the economy gets like an A+ rating. Because when I started out, there is so much free stuff that you could get. Now, I'll explain how the economy works. So this here, you know, I know most of you guys don't play this, but this is like kind of your main currency, right? This is called gems. And you can buy them, but what you primarily do is that you use gems to buy packs, right? So if we go to the shop, and I'll actually buy a pack here just so you can see what it's like. Every pack costs 100 gems, you know, no matter what pack it is, for the most part. So you could think of a gem as being 1% of a pack. So I have 164 gems. Therefore, it's like I have 1 and a fraction packs that I can pull from. So I'm going to go ahead and buy a pack here, just so you can see what it's like. And then we open it, and then we get the cards. And actually, this is a really lucky pull. I think you guys can't really see it, but hold on. I pulled a Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, which is actually a very competitive ultra rare. So just like in the TCG, you know, ultra rares are harder to get than the other rarities. And in this game, ultra rare is like the highest rarity. And ultra rare, it's also like the main bottleneck for players in the sense of, I'll actually show you guys a bit of my collection real quick. So I'll go to deck, and we'll just click on, you know, any deck here, right? We'll go ahead and look at my Sky Striker deck. And, you know, you'll be able to see this represents my ability to craft certain cards. So you need 30, you know, points to make a new card, right? So say, like, for example, one of the things I considered my Sky Striker deck is maybe I should add a third linkage, which is an ultra rare. Well, I can try to open packs and pull it, or you see here I can craft it for 30, but I only have 20, so I can't. But you'll notice for like normals and rares, I have effectively infinite points, right? I could craft as many normals or as many rares as I wanted. Supers are also a bit more of a bottleneck, but it's a lot more manageable. But the reason that I only have like 4 competitive decks instead of like 20 is because of that bottleneck. So that's how the system works. Now that I've explained that, when I started playing the game, I noticed there's a lot of ways to get these free gems. So this is probably like the easiest one. Right, so I'll just show you guys how this works here, and I'll add my face back. You'll notice this is sort of solo mode here. And if I, beat this bot with my own deck, a deck that I have total control over what's in, I get 200 gems for that, which is like 2 booster packs. But you can only do it once. But you'll see if we go back, there's all of these different opportunities to do that. And I cleared them all, right? All of these, little things they teach you about decks. This is a way to farm currency, but there's a limit. So in the beginning of the game, I was farming currency. I was opening packs. I was getting tons of ultras. I was dismantling some of those ultras, using them to craft new ultras. And I'm like, wow, it's actually just really easy to build a deck. A competitive deck even. Like, you can build pretty much like whatever you think the best deck is. You can probably build that within your first week of playing the game, if not like your first 3 days of playing the game, just by doing stuff like this. And then there's sort of other ways to deal with currency too. There's a battle pass, which I've already completed. But what I like is that the premium battle pass, it doesn't cost real money like it does in a lot of games. It's just, again, gems. So it's 700 gems to get the premium battle pass, but then you get more than 700 gems worth of value out of the battle pass. So it's clearly worth it. So I'm not trying to like dive too deep into the economy, because I know some of this is going to like go over the heads of the people who don't play. But basically what I was surprised by is how easily, as a new player, I could build a solid top tier deck that could compete with people who have been playing for years. And to me, that is key. Now, as I started playing more, I think I've played, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks at this point, my progress started to slow down because I finished farming solo, I finished my battle pass, and now like my only way to get gems is missions. And you do get a decent amount, but it's not a lot. So you get 20 every day just for logging in, and then if you do your missions, that's another 120 for all 3 of them. So that's 140, and then if you just watch someone's replay, essentially, it gives you another 5. So every day you can get 145 gems. That's 1.5 packs. Now that doesn't sound too bad. You just watch me open one, and you're like, wow, Alan got good cards out of his pack. Getting 1.5 packs a day seems pretty good. Well, most of the packs have garbage in them, right? They just have no competitive cards in it. And it takes a while to really, build up the cards you want. Open enough packs, get enough ultras, and you can basically dismantle ultras and craft new ones at a 3-to-1 ratio. So I can take 3 ultras that I don't want and convert them into 1 ultra that I do want. And it's the same for the other rarities. But my point is that it takes a while to do that. So if you grind, you can kind of get, 10, 20 top tier decks, whatever. But it's not quite as easy as I thought, right? In the first week, I was like, oh, this is easy. I'm just going to have like every deck in a few weeks. But that's not quite the case. So then I was thinking, given like how much my progress sort of rocketed up and then sort of went sideways, I was like, I don't know. Maybe the monetization isn't an A+. Maybe it's more like an A-. But then what convinced me to increase my rating again is the fact that, unlike a lot of other games, this game is not pressuring you to spend money. In fact, it took me a while to even figure out how to spend money in the game, because they do not push it at all. It's not like other games. You hear, oh, it's a free-to-play game. It's on mobile. And you think, okay, I know what's going on here, especially given that it's run by Konami. I'm sure it's going to be one of those things where they're going to be like constantly hounding you to spend money. But they don't. They don't at all. So because of that, my overall rating for the economy and monetization, I would say it's an A. It greatly exceeded my expectations, given the kind of game that it is and the company that's making it, and the fact that there is no pressure on you whatsoever to spend money. makes me say, that this game has great monetization, that it deserves that A. Now, I know some people will be negative in the comments, be like, well, the fact that, like, there's microtransactions at all, that means, like, the game's predatory. No, it's really not. Like, I understand the perspective of, like, oh, every card in the game should just be free, there should be no monetization whatsoever, or, they should only monetize, like, cosmetics or something. But, like, we're talking about a for-profit organization here, and personally, I think the monetization of the game reflects a very favorable balance in terms of, hey, we want to let people enjoy the game, and hey, we also want to make money. Now, second category that I want to talk about is the UI. And I'll just let you all know. I'll let you see the UI a bit. I'm gonna play a solo game. Just very low stakes here. I don't want to like play a rated game because I want to show off the UI and be explaining that. So I think the UI could be better. And this is one of those things where, again, I have some like perception in my head of Konami is a gaming company, and I would think that, like, hey, as a gaming company, they would know how to make a good UI. And the UI isn't terrible. You just sort of activate a card, right? You can, like, click on a card, set it, click on a card, activate it in whatever zones you want. And I'll just go ahead and play out a game real quick here. Now, what I don't like about the UI is that there is no drag and drop, and there is a lot of clicking. So you notice, I click to activate my doll. I click. This is all pretty normal here. But, you'll notice, like, when I exceed something here, which I'm going to do in a sec. So first of all, it's interesting because when I click on my extra deck, what would feel intuitive to me, because I want to make a rank 8 exceed summon here. What would feel intuitive to me is going, okay, I'm going to click on my extra deck, click on the card that I want, and then summon it, right? Like, there should be some button here that says summon this card. But that's actually not the way it works. And again, I'm coming at this from a new player, and me thinking, like, how should things logically work? Instead, like, what you have to do is, I have to, say we don't have extra deck open, and maybe I'm, like, new to this deck, so I want to, like, check my options. So I have to click on the deck, check my options here, go, oh, I want this rank 8 here. And then, I have to click on, like, this window down here. I can't do it from up here. And then special summon, right? And, you'll see, also the fact that, like, once I've decided I'm summoning this, I can't change my mind now, right? I can't say, like, oh, I clicked on the wrong rank 8. I want to make a different one. It's like, no, you're locked into this one choice. Which, again, like, a lot of this stuff, it's like it's not the end of the world, but it doesn't feel intuitive. And the first few days that I was playing, maybe not the first few days, on, like, day 1, I felt confused. And for certain things, they'll often have, like, confirmation windows where it's like, oh, you want to summon this guy? Oh, are you sure these are the materials you want to use? So I feel like here I'm playing a combo deck because, of course, I am. And when I'm playing out this combo, I feel like there is an excessive amount of clicking that I have to do. Where I have to, oh, click this, click that, click this, click that. And like, maybe this is just me being nitpicky, but I do not like the clicking. And I understand why they did it this way. Like, I know based on the way that Konami has, like, made their video games in the past, like, if you ever played any of the old, like, Game Boy Advance games that were Yu-Gi-Oh games, the UI was, like, kind of the same way. You would use the arrow keys to, like, go over to the card that you wanted, hit A, and then, like, play that card. That's, like, kind of the way that this works. But I feel like, in the modern era of, this game is either you're playing it on a PC or on a phone. In either case, you have the ability to drag and drop. So to me, like for this trap, instead of clicking on this and setting it, it would be nice if I could just drag and drop it. Oh shit, you can. Oh, well, I learned something new every day. I'm not gonna lie, I literally didn't even know this before I made the video. I've been playing for 3 weeks, and I had no idea you could even do this. So, what I would like... Oh my god, this video is... I'm gonna look like an idiot. But the point is, you know, I've been playing for several months. Not several months. Several weeks, and I didn't know you could do this. Because the way that the tutorial worked, they never explained that. They're like, hey, if you want to play a card, click on it, and then click on where you want it to go. So I assume I could do it. Obviously, it's not legal for me to activate the spell right now, but if it was, you know, I assume I could do that. So that's actually, like, really interesting. And again, with, like, the graveyard, to me, it feels intuitive that I could, you know, click on my graveyard, click on this card, and activate the effect, right? Because I want to activate this cattle screen. Instead, what I have to do is, I have to click on my graveyard, say, oh, there's a card I want to activate, and then click Activate Effect. Which, to me, that just seems like an extra step. So that's how this works here. And if we're gonna like link summon, you know, this isn't the optimal turn 1, but I'm just showing you, you know, how this works. You know, I want to link summon, so I click this, and then I have to like click confirm. So I have to click twice. I will say, like, hearing myself talk, this does sound super nitpicky. So originally, when I was gonna record this video, I was gonna give the UI a B-. But since I literally just found out now that you can drag and drop, I am going to upgrade my rating to a B. Because having drag and drop in the game, I think makes the gameplay a lot faster. Could make the gameplay a lot faster. Keep in mind, I have to try this out, see how practical it is. But even for some of the monsters, like with Rogue Doll, for example, I had to activate the effect. I assume I can't just drag and drop the Rogue Doll to a zone, it'll figure out that I want to activate the effect. If it does, that's cool, actually. But that's, you know, you get the sense of how the UI works. So I feel like there's a lot of, even like this, like, I don't like these sort of like, almost like pop-up windows. I feel like there's a better way to do that. I also wish there were like better shortcuts. So if I wanted to, say I didn't want to summon a monster here. In this case, I'd want to summon the Drury Doll. But if I didn't, I can press escape as a hotkey for no. And if I press, I have a 4-button mouse, and one of the buttons is automatically mapped to escape, which means that if I click that button on my mouse, then that is also functioning as a hotkey. I'm not sure if there is a hotkey for yes. Like, I would think logically that, like, enter should be a hotkey for yes, but they don't have one. And in the game settings, I'll show you the game settings. I'll just surrender here. In the game settings, I think it would be nice if there were some, like, better UI options, ways that I could hotkey certain things. And, like, again, maybe it's like drag and drop, where there, like, are some hotkeys that I just don't know about. But if you go to, like, game settings, there's not anywhere to have hotkeys. You know, as far as I can tell. Like, there's stuff about chaining. There is something about confirmations. I might look into these confirmation settings later. You know, there's stuff about, like, oh, how do you want to, like, display the cards, whatever. But there's nothing to set hotkeys for certain things. Like, if I wanted to set, like, Y on my keyboard to yes or N to no, there's not, like, a way to... Maybe it does do that. Like, I haven't tried that. But again, like, I feel like the UI, not only did they not explain how it works well, to the point where I just figured out that drag and drop is a thing today as I was recording this video, but there's no way to like add hotkeys or change any of the controls, right? Like most normal video games, if I'm playing like Elden Ring, for example, I can map any key to whatever I want, right? Within the context of that game. Here, we don't have a way to do that. So yeah, that's something that I wish there was. Also, this is like kind of another random nitpick, but at the start of your turn, when you draw, it doesn't draw a card automatically. So you didn't see it because in that game I went first. But if we go second, and, you know, I play this out for you guys. So yeah, so I'm gonna go second. And I'll show you what I mean. The guy's turn won't take very long because it's, you know, it's a bot that's playing a fair deck. So yeah. Okay. So you'll see now that it's my turn, it doesn't draw my card automatically. And I find this highly annoying. And I had assumed, I'm like, surely there has to be somewhere in the settings. Okay, if you sit there and wait for long enough, it will draw your card automatically. But, and I'll just end my turn here so you can see how it works again. But normally it's like you have to click on the deck to draw a card. And I get that, like, the games aren't lasting that many turns, so it's not really a big deal. But I'm amazed that, like, there's no setting to just skip that and just automatically draw my card. Like, you have to do it. Like, it's not like there's some sort of option there where you can choose not to draw your card. And so, yeah, I find that part of the UI, like, so strange. And the fact that there's no way to change that. So again, it's like, I know this is all a little nitpicky, but that's why I'm giving the UI a B instead of like a C. So you see there, I clicked on the deck and it drew me a card. So yeah, I definitely think there's some aspects of the UI that could be improved. One, I think, is just education. I think if there are some sort of UI settings or tricks that I missed, it would be nice if the game told me that instead of like sending me on a wild goose chase to figure it out. And then, again, there's some things like that with the deck that I'm like, why the hell does it work this way? Why can't I change it? And then the things with, like, summoning from the extra deck, activating the effects in the graveyard, to me, that feels super unintuitive. Like, don't get me wrong, you figure it out. You figure it out eventually, but the game doesn't, like, it doesn't really guide you through that. I guess, you know, once you play solo mode and it gives you a deck that, like, has an extra deck, it'll explain how to do it, but until you get to that point, it's unclear. Like, you can build an extra deck, and it'll take you, like, a couple of minutes to even figure out how to summon something from it. Which, again, to me, like, it's not as intuitive as it could be. Again, like, the UI could be much worse. Like, Magic's Online, its UI wasn't that great either. And to some extent, like, I give them a pass because Yu-Gi-Oh! The game was created before the era of, like, digital CCGs. And now it's like if you were creating a game that was not like a paper card game, it was just a digital CCG, you would sort of, like, design the rules to mesh with the UI, right? Like, a lot of digital-only CCGs like Hearthstone or even, like, Marvel Snap, the rules of the game and the game mechanics go together with making the gameplay, like, very seamless, making the UI very intuitive. So it's like if you play Hearthstone, for example, and I haven't played Hearthstone a lot, but for, like, the brief 5 minutes that I played, it was super easy to figure out the UI. Whereas with this, I feel like not so much. Now, last but not least, and this video has gone on a little longer than I would want it to, but hopefully you guys are getting some good information, is the gameplay itself. Right? Like, is the format good? Is the game balanced? Well, that is highly subjective. They've designed the gameplay a certain way, and I think they've done it for a certain reason, which is kind of the trend with digital CCGs, particularly ones that people are playing a lot on mobile, is that you want the games to be quick, right? That was, like, kind of what people liked about Hearthstone, or even, like, Marvel Snap even more. Like, Marvel Snap, every game is 6 turns, so you know exactly how long every game is going to be for the most part. And there's, like, a time limit, so it's like, you know that like, oh, if I have 10 minutes to spare, I can play a game of Marvel Snap, and it's not, I won't have to like concede in the middle of it because I have to go somewhere else. And that sort of mentality for mobile CCG game developers, that has worked well. The idea of, oh, we're going to make the games quick, we're going to make the games easy. And with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, I feel like they kind of were trying to fit like a square peg into a round hole. Because again, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was designed like before that era, and now they're trying to make it like fit into that, that preference or that trend. And because of that, because of the fact that the games need to be short, most of the decks are very powerful in the sense that they can do extremely impactful things on the first turn of the game. And I know, like, to some extent, like, that trend had just been sort of going on in Yu-Gi-Oh! For a while, right? Like, even when I stopped playing in, 2013 and then came back in 2016 briefly, that was how, like, the game was then. But, like, there was kind of a limit to it, right? Like, when I, for those who don't know, I was, like, the first person ever to document a one-card FTK in Yu-Gi-Oh! It was Future Fusion, and that's why, like, Future Fusion got errated. Now, when I discovered that one-card FTK, it was kind of, like, a big deal because that was a thing that was not supposed to exist. Like, you weren't supposed to find a one-card FTK. Whereas now, it's, disclaimer, the main deck I'm playing is Gimmick Puppets. And this is like a deck that is literally designed to have a bunch of one-card FTKs. That's like the whole point. And I'm a terrible human being, so I don't mind just FTKing everyone constantly. But I think there are like a lot of people who wouldn't like that. And what's broadly considered the best deck, in the format currently is Tenpai Dragons. And that deck is similar. It doesn't have one-card FTKs, but it's a deck that goes second, and it has a lot of one-card OTKs. And when I say OTKs, I mean, like, they're attacking you for 20,000 points of battle damage. That number is not even an exaggeration. They are roughly attacking you for 20,000 points of battle damage, starting all off of a single card. And that is, that's why the deck is good. And there are a lot of decks that are similar. And, like, the pros are, like, again, the games are fast, right? Like, you can see turn one and know who's going to win, right? If I open, one of my one-card FTKs and the person doesn't have a hand trap to stop me, I'm going to win, game's over. Tenpai Dragons, same thing. If they're going second and they go, oh, I'm going to duster your back rows, and then I'm going to summon, whatever dragon it is, any of them, basically, I'm just going to attack you for 20,000 points of battle damage. And the game's over. And then there's some decks, like even the card that I just opened, good example, this is an extremely powerful card, and they're just going to summon this guy on, like, turn one and, have some other things that go along with it, and it's like, oh, the game's over because, the player went first and made, like, 1,000 negates on turn one. So that's, like, the way that the gameplay is. And I think some people are, like, more okay with that than others. I prefer, like, the slower, grindy style of gameplay, but, like, I understand that, like, it's not that era anymore. So it's, like, at this point, if I was, like, reviewing this game, I don't know, say 5 years ago, I know the game didn't exist 5 years ago, but for the sake of the argument, let's say it did, and I was reviewing this game as it was now, I would probably feel, like, a lot more negatively about this. But I've sort of entered the acceptance stage of grief, which is that, okay, I understand, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Today isn't what it was, and it never will be that. So for me personally, I'll get to the point, I would give the gameplay a C. To me, it's not bad enough to warrant a D. It's not good enough to warrant a B. It's okay. I think the game has some balance issues. Like, Tenpai Dragons, they just got nerfed with the most recent Forbidden Limited list, which it is different for this game. It's not like the same as the TCG. So, you can see that it got a couple of nerfs somewhere. Where is it? Oh, yeah, here it is. Christmas present. So this is how Tenpai Dragons got nerfed. And I don't think this nerf is going to stop it from being the most popular deck and from being widely considered the best deck. What I do like about their bans, though, is when like a sort of tier 2 or tier 3 deck isn't really doing that well, they will throw them a bone, right? Like I built Sky Strikers and they're going, hey, Sky Strikers aren't really a top tier deck, so we're going to put Hornet Drones to 3, see what happens. Or Trick Stars, not a top tier deck. Not even like as good as Sky Strikers, you know, right now. But hey, we're going to put Trickster Reincarnation at 3. Maybe that'll make this deck more competitive. So it is a very diverse meta. That I think is an important point to understand. Like the most popular deck, Tenpai Dragons, it's about, I don't know, 20% of the meta, give or take. But like the other 80% is like 80 different decks that are all 1% of the meta. That's exaggerating a bit, but like you get the idea. It's like a bunch of decks that are like 2%, 3%, 5% of the meta. So, and for some people, again, I think that can be a positive or a negative. Like when I was new, and by the way, I still consider myself pretty new, I found it very hard to get a sense of like what every deck does. Sometimes I feel like I'm just kind of blindly going around like, oh man, how do I counter this deck? I don't know any of the cards in it. Blah, blah, blah. And I think that can be intimidating for newer players. Like at a certain point you get used to it. And if you enjoy the game, like eventually you'll figure out like how all different decks in the meta work. And of course, the best way to figure out how a deck works is to play it yourself. You can only build so many decks, but there's online guides and stuff that you can read. So the meta is like diverse, which I think is, for most people, that is like a good thing. And like if you have like some pet deck, like, oh, I really like E-Heroes. Like you can build your E-Hero deck and it'll be decent, right? Like it's not going to be tier 1, but like you can win. And if you play well, you can even get to master rank, right? That's I'm not quite to master rank yet, but that's my honest opinion. So, and it's like, I know some of the people that play the retro formats, that's like part of what they're looking for. I know like some people cite that, oh, that's what I like about Edison format. I can play all these different decks. To me, like game balance is more important than meta diversity. I don't mind playing like a quote unquote mirror match format if the gameplay feels good. And there are other decks that can compete even if they're not popular. The problem is that I feel like Tenpai Dragons in particular, and also like arguably Gimmick Puppets. Like my personal opinion is that Tenpai Dragons is the best deck, Gimmick Puppets are the second best deck. That is my personal opinion. And that is my opinion because I feel like they are far more efficient and far more lethal than other decks in the format. You know, you can build other decks that are doing similar things, but then they often just feel like a worse version, right? Like if you're playing some sort of battle damage based OTK deck that's not Tenpai Dragons, it just feels like a worse version of Tenpai Dragons. And it's like, you can still win with it, right? Because like the gap isn't insurmountable, but to me, like I think it needs to be balanced a little more. I will talk about one thing that I like though, which I think is like a little controversial. I do like the fact that Max C is at 3. I have always been a Max C proponent. You know, Max C is like a pretty old card. Like the card came out more than 10 years ago. So I've played my fair share of Max Cs. You know, I was playing Max C way before all of you. And, you know, Max C, it's basically like a 3-of staple in every deck. You know, like almost every deck that I've built has 3 Max Cs in it. And hand traps in general are super popular. What I like about Max C in this sort of overpowered meta is the fact that it keeps the more broken decks in check. Like a deck like Sky Strikers that's tier 2, it doesn't care that much about Max C, right? Like you can build a deck that is less broken, and then what you get out of building a deck that's less broken is like, oh, well, my deck is sort of more normal summon heavy, less special summon heavy. You know, it's not going to kill on turn 1, turn 2, usually not even turn 3. But the pro is that I don't really care if my opponent Max sees me. And I think that's good. The problem is that, like, Tenpai Dragons, which is, again, the best deck, doesn't really care about Maxi for a different reason, which is you can draw all the cards you want. I'm still attacking you for 20,000. So good luck. So, like, I can see some people not liking this and saying, like, well, it warps the meta too much. But I think it kind of warps the meta in a good way. And in general, I feel like like the ban restricted list, from my experience, like maybe it's just that like Konami has gotten smarter in like the last 10 years. I don't know. But it seems like they're a lot more deliberate with some of these choices. And they're willing to like buff these like tier 3 decks. And they're willing to nerf the tier 1 decks. But not like nerf the tier 1 decks to the point of unplayability. Because like, oh, we're releasing a new archetype and we need to sell it. Like that's how I felt like advanced format was. Where it wasn't like Magic the Gathering where they have set rotation. But it felt like artificial set rotation, where whatever's in the newest set is the best deck, and then after some period of time, they nerf that, and then force you to buy whatever is in, like, the newer sets. And they just kind of did that over and over again. Whereas here, it seems like, again, like with things like Sky Strikers, they're deliberately going, we want this deck that's filled with a bunch of old cards to be playable. So we're going to like put Hornet Drones to 3. Now, I don't think Hornet Drones at 3 is really going to affect where this deck is in the meta. Like it's a tier 2 deck and I think it's still going to be a tier 2 deck. But like it's good that they're throwing the more classic archetypes a bone every once in a while. They're throwing the tier 2 decks a bone. And I feel like what they're trying to do is let everyone sort of like be their own player, right? Have their own play style. So again, it's like in terms of game balance and gameplay, I think it could be better. I'd give it a C. I think maybe you could convince me to give it like a C+. But those are my ratings overall. I think the economy is like the strong point. I think the game's very easy to get into. I think the UI is definitely good. And when I'm like rating the UI a B, I'm comparing it to like other CCGs that are made by experienced game developers. In comparison to like Dueling Book, the UI is amazing, but that's not like my point of reference, right? I'm judging them as a professional video game company. So UI B, economy A, gameplay C. Overall, I'd give the game a B. And as someone who again has been a critic of Konami, the game greatly exceeded my expectations. And I am going to keep playing it. In fact, I've been so satisfied from playing this game that I've decided to start a second channel where I will be documenting all of my gameplay on Master Duels, giving advice, talking about decks, etc., etc. Pretty much like the same kind of content I make on this channel, but about Master Duels instead of GOAT format. So if that is something you're interested in, go check out the first video on my new channel. It is right here. And yes, I know some people are going to get worried and go, oh, Alan likes Master Duel now. He's going to stop making videos here. No, that is not the case. I'm still going to be making GOAT format videos. I like GOAT format. And really another point that I want to add, in terms of gameplay, is I do wish that Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel had some sort of alternate format. Now, I'm not saying it has to be like GOAT format, but even like a Pauper format, right? Where you can't play any ultra rares. I think that would be an interesting idea for a format. Or like a legacy pack format where you can only play the cards that come in the legacy packs. That would be kind of more of like a retro format style of game. Again, I can understand like why they don't do it, because they want the gameplay to be fast paced. Also, draft would be amazing. Oh my god, if they had a draft and it was good, I'd be in heaven. But, what can you do, really? So, yeah, I hope you liked my honest take on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Let me know if there's some sort of key point that I missed, something that I'm overlooking. Go ahead and drop that in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and yes, do go check out that new channel if you want to see Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel gameplay.